Well, welcome back to another episode with Jamie and Paul and SIA Austria. Today we're talking about probably the most sensitive of subjects, the Brexit. It's definitely... it's a heavily opinionated subject, really, and we tried everything to remain distant from it because I think our personal politics are of no interest to anybody. And at the end of the day, we're just ski instructors. I mean, what do we know?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you my personal politics about it. I think it's an absolute disgrace, personally. I think we're going back many years. Why would you try and take away people's freedom, ultimately? I just think I'm ashamed to be British, basically. I think,
which is probably the answer that most people who work seasons and tend to travel a lot would have said.
Yeah, I mean, I don't live in the UK, so I can't. It doesn't affect me in a sense of regarding income and different things like that in the UK, but it definitely affects me being British and having the ability to travel and move around Europe freely and work in Europe.
There's a lot more red tape now at this stage, and we'll come on to that because people obviously will be asking the question, what do I need to do now? But from our side in SIA, it's a sensitive subject because I feel for our students, because if we look at them, Jamie, probably 80% sort of fall into about 18 to 20-year-old.
Yeah, so I think we said off camera just before it started, it was like 3.5 years ago. So our clients, so like you say, a lot of our clients would be 15 at the time. Yeah, I mean, so they don't even have the right to vote and have a voice regarding what's going to happen in the next few years for themselves. And then obviously it's a huge force that it's gone on this long. I mean, I could curse a lot right now, but we're on
Jamie's
camera.
very sensitive to the Brexit issue.
I'm not sensitive to the Brexit. I just think it's just disgusting. And it's a bit like Trump as well. We can go there about how everything just seems to be going back over.
I think Brexit's the extremes, isn't it? You get the extremes of Jamie there, very sensitive to it, angry about it, frustrated and feels embarrassed about it here in Austria.
Yeah.
And then you get the opposite side of the people who are up in arms and it's the best thing ever. It's, this had to be done. And you get the two coins. I'd like to think I'm in the middle where I understand why people were wanting to vote for Brexit. And also understanding why people didn't want to vote for the Brexit. Obviously, again, from a business interest and from a respect to globalization, I personally don't agree with Brexit, but I do understand people who did. What we have to do is, and Jamie picked this up before, I think, is you can only control what you can control. This is now something which is we have to react to and think, well, what do we need to do next?
You can't control somebody else's action, but you can control your reaction to that action. So, how are we going to move forward with Brexit as a company?
Well, as a company, that's not an issue for us because we don't change. Basically, as you said, we're here in Austria. Yep. We're an Austrian-based company, and we still offer the job guarantee. We still offer everything that we've always offered. It just means, how do we adapt some of our courses to compensate for people from the UK, for example, that won't have simplicity in working now, and we'll come on to whether they can or they can't. But what we can do, and what we're doing immediately in January on our website, is you'll see a new batch of courses that are aimed specifically at people at the UK level, UK passport holders who wish to A, do a gap year, B, do a season also working, and how they can still work and still have that gap year that they always wanted, albeit there'll be some different types of forms to fill out, but it's still going to be possible. One of the best routes, I think, for people affected heavily by Brexit will be to look at courses, for example, where we can still train them up in either Argentina, for example, to become either, whether it be with our Argentinian, Austrian courses, an NZ course or a Canadian style course in Argentina, that then allows people to then work, for example, in Japan, which is going to be extremely popular for the British people because there's a great working visa system there, which is simple.
Yeah, and over there, when you do work for a ski school, I've got a lot of friends who've done the seasons in Japan. It's generally an Australian ski school, so it's all British-speaking clients. You get a lot more diversity of language. Well, maybe it's not. There's a lot more diversity of languages, but you get a lot more access as an instructor in Austria to a lot more different languages. So your language skills do need to be a little bit up there. But in Japan, you generally work for an Aussie ski school.
That wasn't quite clear. That confused me. Basically, what you meant to say was, in Austria, you do need to have language skills.
In Austria, you do need more language skills.
Okay.
Over in Japan, you work for an Australian. I was used the word Austrian instead of Australian. Yeah, basically you just need to be a native English speaker.
Which is why, from Ski Instructors Academy side, we will offer a lot more just English courses where there's no language involved.
Yeah.
Previously, we were the kings of always having to say, look, you need to learn German at the same time. And when we say learn German, we mean like pidgin German, like the basis, how to count 1 to 10, how to say a few words.
You have to be able to control a group in German.
Yeah. But now that won't be as necessary for a lot of people who really are not going to work in Europe, but might end up in China, Japan, for example, or, wanting to work in other regions around the world. Because as you say, it's much more English based.
Yeah.
And I think as well, the advantages for those, for example, let's say you come down to, you finish uni about June or something, June, July?
I don't know, I'm very low educated individual, Paul.
So you finish July, you can come down to, let's say, Argentina in August, have a fantastic experience in Argentina, because it's an awesome country to train in. And we're even going to be running connections through into New Zealand in the future. And then you can then have a guarantee of work in Japan the following winter, which would be the Northern Hemisphere winter, a few months later.
Start early December.
I mean, what a gap year. You get one day the Latin American side, and then you go a few months later and you're in the Asian side. I mean, this must be the most incredible thing. And one of the best things got to be in Japan in that is the money you earn. You're earning twice and three times what you would earn in Austria.
Yeah. The money is much better in Japan. There's much more work. Obviously, January as well. It's Japan. So, the powder, it's world famous for the amount of precipitation it has over there, the amount of snowfall over there. So it's definitely a big selling point for me. Total foreign experience as well, completely different culture. So that's going to be a huge selling point as well.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm here selling and not
modern. Don't get me wrong, it's a modern culture. You're not throwing people into the middle of nowhere.
There's swings and roundabouts. You have a benefit usually, pre-COVID, the après in Austria, in Europe is a huge side of it. The party side of the industry is a huge draw. I think in Japan it's not there so much, but I think you come together as a community, much more of instructors, and hang out in accommodations much more. So I think there's a different style of ski seasons. I think it's much more kind of why I got into the industry for the skiing. It's much more ski based. Obviously, you're going in the backcountry and you're shredding the.
So we're looking at the answers to obviously Brexit questions, that are likely to be asked. And we could harper on about, look at our courses. We've now got specific courses aimed at that UK market that may suffer. But let's look at it also and say, well, we've got several problems. One, you've got existing people who've already trained and used to work in Europe. They're going to have a problem for several reasons. One, obviously, and this is a real sad issue. I feel like Ski Instructor Academy now is working more closely now with, for example, Basie. And Basie's turned itself around. It's really trying to renew itself. And what a shame, what a kick in the teeth it's had when it's just starting to put itself back on its feet. It's got different management, different ethics, etc. I can see a real way forward for Basie again within the coaching circle, etc. And then they get that all done, and then the government behind their back does what it's done. And if somebody's holding like a Basie qualification at the minute, you can see by all the mails going back and forwards from Basie, etc., to its members. It's such a shame for them. Whereas, yes, okay, if you've got an Austrian qualification, I get it. You bypass that part of the hurdle. You've bypassed the problem that Basie's now going to have to resolve somehow as to how it gets back into the European Union with its qualification. And because a lot of countries, and because I deal a lot with, obviously, the authorities here in Europe, especially in Austria, from the ski associations, I know that they're not going to be that helpful to Basie to bring them back on board, which is a shame. But that's politics for you. And I can't get too involved in that. But what I can tell you at this stage is, yes, having an Austrian qualification at least you don't have to worry about your qualification drying up. Even if you are a UK passport holder, you still have a European qualification, and therefore you can still use that here. That means that for those people that I'm talking about who did our courses, the thousands of people who've done our courses,
peeps.
The thousands of peeps that's done our courses over the last 10 years, they still can actually use that qualification. It's an Austrian qualification. They can still come here and work. How do they do that? Well, that's going to be the issue, because what normally happens is when you arrive into Austria, even let's say our students from last year would have done their course and then had to register with the local town hall. It's a very simple process. They register to say, now this is classed as their Hauptwohnsitz. This is classed as their main residency at this time when they're a ski instructor here in Austria. And then what would have then happened was they would have just worked freely because they're an EU member. They had no problems. They left and went away. They paid taxes here. They have a pension here. And if many of them knew how much taxes they paid and knew how to claim that back, that would be another story we could do.
It's a nice little bonus to the end of your season, to be fair, if you do know how to do it.
Yeah, definitely is. But that was simple. But now the difference is, as they could still work here, and the system it still needs to be looked at. But normally when you are outside the EU, as a ski school like I am, if I'm going to employ somebody, I have to give a reason why I would employ somebody from England, for example, rather than anybody in the EU. And that means that the only chance I have to employ the English person is if there is not enough ski instructors, for example. And I say, there's just not enough ski instructors. I need this extra guy. I can't find anyone. If there are ski instructors, the Austrian government will say, no, there's this guy here, there's this woman here, you must take them first.
Franzi, Heinz.
Yeah, there's all these other guys that you could take before that person. Or they have to have a skill set that's important, where I can say, well, actually, they speak 7 languages, they can juggle when they ski down the slopes, and there's some reason. But if there's no reason, then it's going to get difficult for me to employ people who aren't registered here as their main residency before December the 31st, 2020. And even then, Jamie and I will have to, on the 1st of January, up till I think the end of this next coming year, have to have an Article 50 filled out, which basically is just telling us that we're nothing. Whereas, same as anybody
being told
coming
that
from,
many a time before, to be fair, so it's no biggie.
Coming from Australia, coming from Africa, coming from New Zealand, coming from Asia, coming from Latin America, we are just going to be the same as all them. We need to fill out an Article 50 form, go across, and we're going to have to get like a plastic card that says we are a resident here in Austria to enable us to move around Europe and to remain in Europe for more than 3 months within a 6-month period. And all these things are going to change. Now, those the effects that's going to have on new instructors is going to be difficult, because it's always going to be unsure whether the two governments will sit down and go, right, well, if you allow so many Austrians, whatever, to study or do something in England, we'll allow the same in Austria. And we have actually this regulations in place, for example, in Australia at the minute. Australia and Austria have a very good working relationship where people can get a working visa from Australia and come to Austria, and vice versa. But it's always got to be vice versa. It's always got to be quid pro quo. You've got to be in a position where both governments make an agreement where they're happy to share so many visas between each other. And so that's why obviously we're developing courses with that in mind. But I feel more sorry for those who, normally would come down here for, like Jamie said, for 3-4 months, and then 8 months they're in England, for example. We still don't know if that's going to be possible. That's the question, really.
Yeah. Yeah, but like we said regarding the COVID conversation, the previous podcast, it's unsure right now. There's so many uncertainties in the industry or in life or whatever. It's a bit out of our hands at the moment. Until we get the information from the government, we can't really plan too
and we
much.
have to work with the information we have currently.
Yeah,
You can only
be present.
Currently, yeah, exactly. The information that is current, and we have to go with that and say, look, yes, you're right. You now you can work. We have work for you here in Austria if you have the legal right to work. Now, how you get the legal right to work might be a red, white, red card, the Rot-Weiß-Rot card it's called, which would work on a point system. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's a simple matter of saying, these are seasonaires, and we're going to allow them to come and work on a 4-month basis. And that's fine. We're going to make an exemption there. That could happen. These are the things that are being talked about. I know from talking to officials here that they want a minimum of 300 fluent English speakers that are really English people, actually, to work here in this region. They want them there. So they're going to be putting pressure on to try and create a system. Okay, this season's done. They're not that bothered about this season because of the pandemic, but they're putting pressure on for 21-22 because they do need English people. But what might happen is it may be that there's only so many of these visas, in which case we will be awarded many of them because of the size of what we are. So we will try and get a good grasp of those. But again, if that's not possible for many people who are already qualified instructors, I feel mostly sorry for them because some of them won't even necessarily be able to just jump into Japan because a lot of the time it's like, if you're over 30, you fall into a different category. Unless you've done so many seasons back to back.
5 seasons or you're a level 3 qualified.
Yeah, you've got a level 3, which, might create more business for us because a lot more people might need to do their ISIA style qualifications. But we need to be able, as the leading company in the world here, to make sure we're offering current, true, accurate advice. And at the minute, the word accurate concerns me because there is a little bit of discrepancy over what I read in the articles here in Austria and from what I'm speaking to people high up in authority within the government. So therefore, at the minute, I think we've just got to go with what we know. Currently, we've got a pandemic. The season's basically done anyway. And I think a lot of people who would have normally instructed have also just said, well,
I think regarding the season, I mean, I'm more of an optimist than Paul. It's just, we're going to have a season. As long as the lifts stay open, you're going to have a season. It's just going to be, if you do come out to do a seasonal gap year or whatever, you're going to, you're going to just have a total different experience. And it can be so much more positive than what it was in the previous.
Yeah, but that's a gap year. I'm on about actual ski instructors.
Okay.
People, they're not going to bother coming out for 3 weeks. It costs them more to come out here for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've got friends who came in to work from start of December who just been sat here eating into their money. And there's still no ski schools are saying, look, this season you're going to have to pay for your lift pass yourself because we don't know if we're going to need you. They're also limited with accommodation. The accommodation, because of COVID, it's got restrictions as to how many people can share rooms now and different things like that. So that leads to more costs for them because they're still paying the same price for that building, but they're allowed less people in it. So I just think it's the world of unknown.
Yeah, what I'm saying is they're not going to come. Those fixed instructors who aren't here now are going to look and go, I'm doing something else now. I'm working in Starbucks.
People are also, furloughed or whatever. They're using the government to survive right now. So they kind of maybe can't go away from that, that money that's helping them stay afloat at the moment. So
with the Brexit thing, focusing on what we need to focus on, we've got two things happening. You've got people who are already qualified who have a different range of qualifications. You've got those with Basie who that's going to be a challenging thing, and we wish Basie all the luck in the world that they get this sorted out, and we're here if they need any assistance. I'm always here to help. Because it's a reinvented association and it really needs to be put back onto its the place it needs to be, to the top.
Basie I experienced when I came through the system with Basie was some phenomenal coaching as well.
Yeah, it's really good,
So,
but if you're lucky enough and you do have an Austrian qualification or an Italian qualification or a French qualification or something like that, then yeah, you're still part of the European bloc with your qualification. And therefore, you just have to work out, how do I get the right to work now? Because your qualifications recognized, you now just need the right to work. And that is what we're discussing here in two ways again, for those that are already qualified, and B, for those that are about to do a qualification and want to work in the future. So therefore, at this time, you can only control what you can at the time, is you are best off with a European qualification, and best off with then the flexibility to use that around the world. In the event you can't work in certain zones, you can always work with that qualification in other areas. So what we're saying is, we know that the gap year market, for example, within the ski industry and snowboard industry, isn't just going to disappear. In fact, if anything, it'll probably get stronger, as it's been doing every year. We need to find a route for them through this quagmire.
Yeah, nice word, quagmire. I haven't heard that in a long time.
So what is that route? Well, at the minute, the current route is that you still need to be registered here. You would then need an Article 50, or you need this red, white, red card, etc. And that is what we're looking at. But at the same time, we are looking at surety, and surety means Asian, Japan. The problem with that is, though, a lot of people on our courses actually don't book sometimes till about September, October. Japan, you need to know. Yeah. You need to already know, because the visas have to go in before that, which is why the Southern Hemisphere course like Argentina is a great one, because you know you've got your qualification, you know what you're doing. You're going to Japan in December the 1st.
Which a lot of the guys did the last time we ran the Argentine
But then again, a lot of people came to Austria. We had 20 odd people who actually qualified here in Austria, because we're in a glacier. We start in October. They were qualified by the 1st of December and headed off to the resort in Japan thereafter and got a double season. Yep. They flew straight out.
Again, they could do that because their booking was early enough. They could get their visa before they qualified, got the qualification, then went off.
So I think the Brexit conversation is something we're going to have to pick up on in future podcasts, etc.
I mean, I've learned so much this morning, because I live in my little bubble where I don't really pay too much attention to it. Even though it does affect myself, you cannot always hear everything through the grapevine anyway. But yeah, I think it's constantly evolving, as it has done for the last 3.5 years. So yeah, we just need to keep our finger on the pulse, or Paul needs to keep his finger on the pulse, and
we'll keep talking to people, keep getting the facts about things. But what I wouldn't do is allow it to concern you too much. It's done, and as frustrating as it is, if you're one of the people that didn't want Brexit, then yeah, it's a frustrating part. I think certainly all those people who voted for it, when they're standing at the airport lines, going through passport control, they'll realise what they've done. And they're standing there for hours trying to get through. It's going to change things massively. But what we have to look at is, it's not going to stop you from having your gap year experience, or it's also not going to necessarily completely stop you if you had been doing this as a seasoned job. Many of the ski schools are looking into systems for 21 to 22 season, how they can bring you back to Austria if you have your Austrian qualification. They still want you. So I can guarantee it's being looked at as it will be. Yes, maybe it starts to limit the numbers down. There'll not be to have as many of you, but certainly the opportunities have not dried up. I'm not giving up on that, and I'm hopeful that you'll be to continue with what you've been doing for the last, whether it be 3, 5 or 10 years, you'll still be to do that around Europe with some sort of system in place, and we'll keep working on that for you.
Thanks for that, Paul.
Absolutely. So, from Ski Instructor Academy and our podcast, we can't wait to see you on our next one. We'll probably be moving on to skiing again.
It'd be nice, yeah. It's a subject I know.